Buckle up, lads, because today's story moves fast, and I mean really fast. Don't just take my word for it. The very first scene shows a ship pulling a coffin out of the ocean, and moments later, two men are shot by a mysterious figure. Inside the coffin lies a body, not a decaying corpse, but a well-dressed, handsome man named Rai, the Noblesse. Suddenly, he awakens and leaves before the sinister organization behind the mysterious figure can lay a hand on him. Rai heads to Yeran High School to meet his loyal servant Frankenstein, who has somehow become the principal of the academy. And honestly, if you're going to hide in Japan, where better to hide than a high school? Since Rai is unfamiliar with the technology of the modern era, and Frankenstein has become surprisingly social over the years, his servant enrolls him as a student so he can adapt to this new world. Naturally, the moment Rai enters the classroom, nearly every girl falls head over heels for him. Rai soon meets Shinwoo, a straightforward young man with a strong sense of justice and an even stronger physique. Before long, Shinwoo and his friends become accustomed to Rai's quiet personality. Meanwhile, the organization dispatches two agents, M21 and M24, to find the Noblesse and bring him back. Both are failed experiments of the organization and have spent their lives being treated like disposable tools. Tired of living in chains, they decide to betray the organization. Their plan is simple: use the Noblesse's power, despite not fully understanding what it is, to free themselves. Unfortunately, the organization's elite agents, Mary and Jake, catch up with them. Instead of eliminating them immediately, they decide to use them to track down the Noblesse's location with the help of a zombie created by M24. While walking home one day, Rai and his friends hear the screams of a woman. They rush to help, only to be attacked by a zombie. Shinwoo throws himself into danger to protect everyone. Realizing that Rai and his friends have witnessed too much, the agents decide to silence them permanently. They kidnap Rai's friends and take them to a hidden facility. There, Jake brutally tortures Shinwoo, beating him relentlessly. The principal is contacted and ordered to bring Rai to the facility. Despite his injuries, Shinwoo refuses to abandon his friends. Watching him struggle reminds M24 of his own past, of the day his closest friend sacrificed his life to save him during the organization's experiments. Driven by regret, M24 attacks Jake, fully aware that he stands no chance. In a desperate attempt to protect the children, he detonates himself. Sadly, Jake survives the explosion without so much as a scratch. Eventually, Frankenstein and Rai arrive at the facility, where M21 is engaged in battle with Mary. Rai orders Frankenstein to handle Mary while he focuses on saving his friends. At first, Frankenstein dominates the fight, but Mary reveals her true form and begins pushing him back. Seeing this, Rai permits Frankenstein to release his seal and fight at full power. The result? Instant defeat. Frankenstein overwhelms Mary and eliminates her in moments. But the true spectacle is Rai versus Jake. And what a display of power it is. Rai uses his overwhelming authority and commands the monster to kneel before him. Enraged, Jake reveals his true form, transforming into an even more grotesque creature. It doesn't matter. He is completely outclassed. Rai finally ends the battle with his blood field technique, covering the area in a crimson rain. In the aftermath, Rai erases his friends' memories to protect them from any future danger. See, I told you this story moves quickly, and it's only getting started. Meanwhile, a special operations squad known as DA5 is eliminating military units in an unknown location before preparing for their next mission, investigating the disappearance of two Union members in Japan. Back at Yeran High School, Rai, the protector of the nobles, continues living a peaceful life alongside his loyal servant Frankenstein and former Union experiment M21, all while keeping their true identities hidden. M21 has even taken a job as the school's security guard to repay Frankenstein for letting him stay at his house. That same day, a violent gang storms onto the school grounds looking for Han Shinwoo, also known as Yusuke Toshiro, the boy responsible for breaking one of their leader's arms during an earlier incident. Ironically, the gang is actually upset because Toshiro once saved the leader's girlfriend from tripping, leaving him insecure and humiliated. Deciding that protecting others is more important than hiding, M21 steps in and effortlessly intimidates the gang leader, sending him running in fear. Later that night, DA5 arrives in Japan and begins their investigation. At the same time, two mysterious figures watch the city from a rooftop, Regis and Sarah. They have come to investigate the events surrounding the abandoned facility, which eventually leads them to Yeran High School and, more importantly, Principal Frankenstein. Regis attempts to use his power on Frankenstein, only for Frankenstein to immediately recognize it as a power belonging to the nobles. To continue their investigation, Regis and Sarah enroll at the school as transfer students, while Frankenstein pretends not to suspect anything. Toshiro is assigned to show them around campus. To everyone's surprise, Toshiro later brings Regis and Sarah to Frankenstein's house. After learning they have nowhere to stay, Rai calmly approves their stay, turning the already unusual household into an even stranger one. The next day, Regis confronts M21 regarding the whereabouts of the missing coffin, and the two soon clash after misunderstandings escalate. However, Sarah interrupts the fight after hearing that Toshiro is being harassed by bullies. By the time they arrive, Toshiro has already handled the situation himself. The following morning, life inside Frankenstein's home becomes even more chaotic. The boys are somehow arguing over soup like siblings, and the new arrival even considers using mind control to make Frankenstein forget the entire incident. He briefly wonders whether it would work on Rai as well. Elsewhere, Khan encounters Tao, a hacker working for the Union. Their battle isn't fought with fists, but through computers. The contest remains surprisingly close until Khan accidentally leaves to answer a phone call, giving Tao the wrong impression entirely. Meanwhile, DA5 learns that M21 is still alive. They immediately send two agents to retrieve him. At first, the meeting remains relatively peaceful, but tensions rise when they begin insulting M21's deceased friend. Matters only become more complicated when Regis arrives on the scene. Rather than helping physically, he criticizes the agent's appearance so thoroughly that one of them loses his temper and attacks. M21 blocks the attack with his own body. Before the conflict can spiral out of control, DA5's captain arrives and takes M21 into custody. Once captured, M21 realizes something unexpected. DA5 doesn't know he betrayed the Union. Unlike the organization he once served, these men seem strangely human. They offer him water, speak to him normally, and ask for cooperation rather than demanding it. After a moment of thought, M21 agrees, on one condition. He wants information about the Union and food. Back at school, everyone notices that their security guard has vanished. They also realize Regis has been acting unusually lately, prompting the group to invite themselves over to Frankenstein's house to relax. Meanwhile, Ikon receives a message from Tao asking to meet in person, leaving his friend to handle all the chores while he heads out. During his walk, Tao encounters several thugs harassing a stranger and quickly steps in. The stranger turns out to be one of DA5's members, and before long, the two unexpectedly become friends. At the cafe, Ikon and Tao meet face-to-face for the first time. Tao openly admits his fascination with Ikon's intelligence, while elsewhere, friendships continue forming in the most unexpected places. Before long, Tao offers to help another DA5 member, Takeo, locate his missing sister, a sister he believes is being held captive by the Union. At the same time, M21 continues being questioned by Shark, DA5's most unstable member. Shark taunts him about the countless missions they carried out together and eventually mentions Takeo's sister. That proves to be a mistake. Enraged, Takeo pulls a gun on Shark and warns him never to mention her again. And just like that, things begin falling apart once more.
Shark soon leaves the hideout and heads toward the school, intending to capture the children and use them as leverage. Regis spots him from a distance and immediately gives chase. To everyone's surprise, the young noble manages to hold his own against the experienced assassin. Unfortunately, Shark quickly realizes Regis is stronger than expected and powers up to close the gap. Even then, Regis maintains the upper hand. That is, until Shark reveals that his partner has already captured the others. Faced with no choice, Regis surrenders. The children are taken back to DA5's base, and when Regis regains consciousness, he finds himself in an extremely dangerous situation. Elsewhere, Sarah informs Frankenstein and Rai that her connection to Regis has suddenly disappeared, meaning he is either unconscious or worse. Before they can leave, Frankenstein receives another alarming report. The other children have vanished as well. Meanwhile, the kidnapped students finally wake up, creating one of the most awkward situations imaginable. On one side are M21, Takeo, and Tao, three former enemies trying to explain why they're technically protecting the people they were sent to capture. Thankfully, the story quickly moves on. Sarah heads toward the hideout, unknowingly followed by several of the strongest individuals in the series. Back at the base, DA5 attempts to persuade the children to remain calm, but the captain has already made his decision. He orders Shark to eliminate everyone, refusing to leave behind any witnesses. Sarah arrives just in time and immediately engages the larger member of the squad, effortlessly overwhelming him. Upstairs, the captain sends Takeo to investigate, not because he expects trouble, but because he doesn't want him witnessing the massacre below. M21, however, finds himself trapped between two choices: honor the promise he made to his fallen comrades, or save the children standing in front of him. Fortunately, his answer comes quickly. For once, the living take priority. M21 intervenes and stops Shark from killing the students. Outside, Frankenstein clashes with the captain's blonde subordinate in a battle that demonstrates just how terrifying the so-called noble hunter truly is. The blonde warrior is visibly shocked by Frankenstein's strength. Meanwhile, Sarah continues her battle, while M21 fights Shark in a desperate struggle. Watching M21 stand against impossible odds inspires Regis, allowing him to break free from his restraints and rejoin the fight. As expected, Shark is no match for him. Forced into a corner, the captain finally steps in, and then everything changes. Without warning, the captain drives his hand through one of his own subordinates. It turns out the enhancement drugs used by DA5 were designed for this exact purpose. By absorbing both the drugs and the power of his comrades, the captain transforms into something far more dangerous. Empowered beyond anything they expected, he sends Regis flying like a ragdoll, and that's when Rai arrives. Outside, Frankenstein's battle reaches a new level. The moment he unleashes more of his power, his sadistic side begins surfacing once again. Takeo, however, refuses to die, not until he learns the truth about his sister. At the same time, Sarah reveals one of her most powerful techniques and finally defeats her opponent. Back inside, everyone witnesses the overwhelming difference between themselves and the Noblesse. Rai doesn't need grand attacks, he doesn't need to move. A few words are enough. Desperate, the captain orders Tao to use the enhancement drug and absorb its power. With no alternatives left, Tao reluctantly prepares to comply. Ikon immediately begs Rai to save him. Elsewhere, Takeo continues struggling against impossible odds until Sarah arrives at the last possible moment to rescue him. Back inside the hideout, Tao refuses to obey the captain's command. Furious, the captain announces that if Tao disobeys, he will kill the children instead. The moment he moves to carry out his threat, Rai intervenes. Then, in front of everyone present, the Noblesse calmly ends the battle with his own power. Silence fills the room. Even the other nobles can do nothing but stare in disbelief at the sheer extent of Rai's abilities. Later, Frankenstein becomes visibly concerned after seeing Rai cough blood from overexerting himself. Using so much power has clearly taken a toll on his body. At the same time, Rai appears equally concerned that Frankenstein broke his seal without permission. Frankenstein quietly explains that he had no other choice. Soon afterward, everyone gathers around the dinner table. For Tao, it's the greatest meal of his life. Not long after, M21 and Takeo officially join them. Later that night, M21 reflects on his inability to protect others. Seeing this, Rai allows him to witness a glimpse of his true potential through a single drop of blood. Then he tells him something he'll never forget. You are not weak. You have the strength to protect many people, for the first time in a very long while. M21 believes him. Later that night, M21 returns to his room, only to overhear Tao telling Takeo a shocking truth. His sister never existed. According to Tao's investigation, the Union fabricated those memories to manipulate him into obedience. After hearing this, Tao suggests they leave the house the next day so they won't become a burden to everyone else. The following morning, the students discover that Tao and Takeo have officially joined M21 as part of the school's security staff. Shinwoo is devastated, not because they're dangerous, but because all the girls immediately begin gathering around them instead of him. Naturally, this leads to an important question. Thus, what kind of girl does Shinwoo actually like? Without hesitation, he admits that he's interested in Sarah. Unfortunately for him, nobody in the room has the slightest idea how romance works. Not M21, not Tao, not Takeo, and certainly not Rai. In fact, Rai becomes genuinely curious about the entire concept, forcing everyone else to awkwardly pretend they're experts on love. The results are exactly as embarrassing as you'd expect. Eventually, the group seeks advice from Frankenstein, only to discover that he spends most of the conversation talking about his own experiences instead. Left with no alternatives, they approach Regis and ask about Sarah's preferences. At first, he refuses to help, but the moment Rai quietly tells him to cooperate, Regis immediately changes his mind. And so the boys find themselves in the library, desperately researching the mysteries of love. To everyone's surprise, Sarah eventually discovers the letter Shinwoo had been trying to write and gently returns it to him. She explains that seeking love is perfectly natural and that sincerity is one of the most admirable qualities a person can have. She never gives him a direct answer, but she doesn't reject him either. The two quietly walk home together. Back at the house, however, a more serious discussion is taking place. The adults are debating whether everyone's memories should once again be erased for their own protection. Nobody likes the idea, but sometimes difficult choices are unavoidable. And just like that, the cycle continues. Meanwhile, in the land of the nobles, an important visitor prepares to travel to Japan. His name is Gejutel, the leader of Rai's clan. To Frankenstein's surprise, Gejutel shares a long and complicated history with him. Even more surprising, Gejutel wasn't sent by his own will. He was ordered there by the current lord herself. And from the look of things, she is already aware that Rai has returned. Back in Japan, Rai welcomes his guest over a cup of tea. Gejutel explains the current state of the noble's world. After Rai disappeared centuries ago, the previous lord entered eternal sleep, the noble's equivalent of death. Since then, his daughter has inherited the position and has spent years searching for Rai, believing him responsible for her father's fate. Then comes one of the story's biggest revelations. Long ago, Frankenstein was known throughout the world as the Noble Hunter. His name alone inspired fear. He hunted powerful nobles and wielded a soul weapon unlike anything humanity should have possessed. Ironically, even back then, Rai remained distant from everyone around him, preferring solitude over companionship. Eventually, Gejutel and another clan leader confront Frankenstein, leading to an intense battle. For the first time in centuries, Frankenstein summons his soul weapon. The clash is spectacular. Power shakes the battlefield as both sides push themselves to their limits. But then, Frankenstein loses control. His overwhelming power erupts violently, ending the battle in a massive explosion. Badly injured, Frankenstein stumbles into the mansion of none other than Rai himself. Desperate to avoid further questions, he claims to be a newly hired servant and insists that the owner simply forgot to mention his employment. The only problem? He doesn't realize he's speaking directly to the owner of the mansion. Soon afterward, the clan leaders arrive and demand that Frankenstein be handed over immediately. Rai refuses. In his eyes, an injured guest remains a guest. Unable to oppose him directly, the clan leaders reluctantly withdraw. Even after all these years, many nobles still resent Frankenstein's existence, and some resent Rai for choosing to protect both humans and nobles equally. To Rai, however, maintaining balance between both worlds has always been his greatest responsibility. Later, Gejutel asks Frankenstein a question he has avoided for centuries. Did you form a blood pact with Rai? Because if he did, it would explain why a human has lived for so long, and why he continues standing beside the Noblesse himself. After Gejutel leaves, the remaining nobles gather to discuss everything they have learned, and not everyone is pleased. One clan leader in particular is furious. When Gejutel later encounters Frankenstein, he warns him not to do anything reckless, reminding him that Rai is constantly risking his own life for the people around him. That warning proves unnecessary. Before long, the angry clan leader confronts Frankenstein directly. The truth soon becomes clear. His anger stems from jealousy. He cannot understand why Rai, a being revered by all nobles, would choose to stand beside a human. Frankenstein remains calm through every insult, until one sentence changes everything. Rai would be better off alone. The moment those words are spoken, Frankenstein loses control. For perhaps the first time in centuries, genuine rage overtakes him. Before the battle can escalate any further, Rai and the Lord intervene. Rai calmly restores Frankenstein's senses, though doing so forces him to use an enormous amount of power, causing him to cough blood once again. Realizing what his master has sacrificed for him, Frankenstein finally accepts the blood pact. From that day onward, the bond between them becomes absolute. Meanwhile, the Lord decides to uncover the truth for herself and orders Sarah to be brought before her. The task falls to a young noble named Cyril. And from the moment he arrives in Japan, it's obvious he has absolutely no manners. He uses mind control on innocent people, attacks M21 without warning, and even picks a fight with Regis before insulting everyone around him. Not long afterward, Sarah speaks privately with Regis before leaving to meet Cyril. Rai immediately senses something is wrong and prepares to intervene, but Frankenstein stops him. If you go, he explains, the Lord will know you've returned. Instead, Rai removes Frankenstein's seal and sends him in his place. What happens next is exactly why people once feared the Noble Hunter. Frankenstein completely overwhelms Cyril. The gap between them is so ridiculous that the fight barely resembles a fight at all. Even while holding back to avoid destroying the city, Frankenstein leaves the young noble utterly helpless. Eventually, Regis and Sarah arrive and stop the battle before it causes any further destruction. With no alternatives remaining, Cyril invokes the Lord's direct command, forcing Sarah to return with him. And so Rai, Frankenstein, and Regis make a decision. They're going to the land of the nobles. Upon arriving, Sarah is immediately questioned by the Lord. However, despite everything, she refuses to betray Rai. As punishment, she is imprisoned. Meanwhile, Rai and the others travel aboard a private jet toward noble territory. Their arrival, however, is anything but elegant. Rather than landing properly, the trio jumps out of the aircraft and allows everyone to assume it simply crashed after entering forbidden airspace. After reaching their destination, Regis leads them to an area forbidden to nearly all nobles, Rai's home. Inside, Rai and Frankenstein immediately sense that something is wrong. Then they discover it. The previous Lord's soul weapon, Ragnarok, has been left behind. Outside, Regis deals with several soldiers tracking them. At first, he handles them effortlessly, but their numbers quickly become overwhelming. Fortunately, help arrives. Soon, the rest of the group reunites, and Frankenstein finally reveals the truth. Rai is not merely a noble. He is the Noblesse, a title that belongs to one being alone, a guardian who exists above all others. As the truth comes to light, a memory from the past resurfaces. The previous Lord once asked Rai a simple question: would you become the next Lord? Before Rai could answer, history took another path. Back in the present, the current Lord learns that Gejutel truly met Rai in Japan and immediately orders him to enter eternal sleep as punishment. The other clan leaders object, but she refuses to listen. Then, for the first time, we learn why she hates Rai so deeply. Years ago, she overheard her father asking Rai if he would become the next Lord. To a child, there was only one possible conclusion. She believed her father loved Rai more than he loved her. Consumed by jealousy for centuries, she finally confronts Gejutel and demands the truth. This time, he gives it to her. "Do not mistake my honesty for fear," he tells her. "I speak now because it is my duty." And with that, the Lord orders Gejutel to enter eternal sleep.
Meanwhile, M21, Regis, and the others attempt to create an opening for Rai and Frankenstein to infiltrate the Lord's castle unnoticed. Unfortunately, they are discovered by Cyril once again. M21 tells Regis to move ahead while he and the others hold the young noble back. At first, their teamwork proves effective, but Cyril is simply too powerful. Inside the castle, Sarah escapes her confinement to save Gejutel, only to be stopped by one of the clan leaders, a woman who has always treated her like a younger sister. Elsewhere, Regis finds himself facing someone equally important to him, his older brother figure. Unlike the others, his opponent doesn't want to fight. He tells Regis to leave and wait for the truth to emerge. Regis refuses. He has chosen his own path, the path Gejutel taught him to follow. Back outside, M21 and the others are ultimately defeated by Cyril. Just before he can finish them off, his older brother arrives and stops him. And then, Frankenstein appears. The atmosphere changes instantly. This time, there will be no games. Revealing that he once fought the previous head of Cyril's clan countless times, Frankenstein forces his opponent to draw his soul weapon. In response, Frankenstein summons the Dark Spear. The battle that follows is nothing short of incredible. At first, both warriors appear evenly matched, though it gradually becomes clear that Frankenstein holds a slight advantage. Meanwhile, M21, Tao, and Takeo enthusiastically cheer him on from the sidelines, much to Cyril's annoyance. Unable to tolerate it any longer, Cyril attacks them directly. Frankenstein immediately shields them, willingly taking the hit himself. However, Cyril's older brother refuses to accept such dishonorable tactics. He reprimands Cyril on the spot before apologizing to Frankenstein. Frankenstein simply smiles. "I understand now why your clan chose you as its successor." Elsewhere, Regis loses his battle, but loses with honor. Back inside the castle, the Lord continues insisting that she will punish Sarah, Gejutel, and Rai alike. Gejutel, however, sees through her anger. "You don't truly wish to punish Sarah," he tells her calmly. "And as for Rai, everyone here knows that's impossible." Then he says the words she has needed to hear for centuries. "You were never abandoned." He explains that Frankenstein is the only human ever acknowledged by the previous Lord and one of the few beings capable of standing alongside the Noblesse himself. Outside, Frankenstein's battle continues intensifying. Realizing that his opponent is still holding back, Cyril urges his brother to combine their soul weapons. He refuses. Those weapons were inherited from their father, and he intends to honor his legacy by wielding them exactly as they were entrusted to him. Frankenstein praises him for his conviction. He then reveals another shocking truth. Their father was the one who taught him how to properly wield a soul weapon. Inside the castle, Gejutel finally reveals the true reason behind the Lord's hatred. She wasn't angry because Rai betrayed her. She was hurt because she believed her father had chosen Rai over his own daughter. And then Gejutel says something that silences the entire room. "I failed as your guardian." He explains that he accepts punishment not because he committed treason, but because he failed to guide her into becoming the leader her father envisioned. At that very moment, the doors open. The original Noblesse has arrived. Rai's entrance isn't greeted with admiration, it's greeted with fear. Without hesitation, the young lord attacks him. One by one, the clan leaders join the battle, but their attacks are effortlessly pushed aside. Eventually, the Lord herself stands against him. Though overwhelmed at first, seeing her people risk everything to protect her rekindles her determination. She unleashes her ultimate technique, Blood Coffin. Rai responds with Blood Field. The two powers collide, canceling each other out and exhausting both users. Accepting defeat, the Lord bows her head and waits for judgment. Rai reaches for Ragnarok, but instead of striking her down, the soul weapon begins to glow. Moments later, the image of the previous Lord appears before everyone present. Before entering eternal sleep, he had left behind a final message. He explains that his decision had nothing to do with betrayal or despair. Instead, he had come to admire humanity's ability to grow stronger despite their short lives. Realizing that true progress requires change, he chose to step aside and allow the next generation to lead. The clan leaders he trusted most joined him in eternal sleep, all except Gejutel. He alone was asked to remain behind and guide the future. Hearing the truth at last, the Lord breaks down in tears. For the first time in centuries, she understands how deeply both her father and Gejutel cared for her. She immediately releases Gejutel and Sarah. Then comes the final part of her father's message. He apologizes for never telling her the truth, because if he had seen her cry, he never would have been able to leave. As his final words fade away, Ragnarok and the Lord's soul weapon resonate together, acknowledging her as the rightful successor. Sometime later, everyone has recovered. Old enemies become allies once again. Even the Lord seems happier than before. During a quiet moment, she asks Rai a simple question. What kind of person was my father? Rai pauses before answering. He was a good father. And with that, the group returns to Japan. Back to Yeran High School. Back to their peaceful, ordinary lives. The end. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like and subscribe for more anime recaps.